What up, though? Welcome to the Fat Boy MMA podcast, where we talk about everything combat sports, but mainly MMA. If you want to hear a couple regular MMA fans talk about MMA history, notable fighters, up and coming fighters, and everything in between, then this is the podcast for you. Now, I should warn you, we're not professionals, but we are big fans of combat sports. Now, if that sits good with you, grab a beverage, sit back, relax, and let's go. Hey everybody, welcome to the Fat Boy MMA podcast. I am your host DC, and of course I got my co-host here with me, Locke.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
So today we got a interesting one. So, one thing that we kind of noticed, especially over the last few months, it seems like for some reason this year, you got a lot of people kind of coming back to MMA. A lot of veterans that kind of were big names before, putting their hat back in the pot, so to speak, for MMA. And I just found it interesting. I'm not sure why this year is the year where so many kind of chose to come back. Sent Locke a text about it, and um, just like, hey, have you noticed, this person came back, this person came back, and whatnot. And then from there, asked his thoughts about kind of having a podcast around it. So I sent a couple names over to him, and wanted to get his thoughts about it. So I'm actually shoot it over to you, Locke, and throw out whatever you want to throw out, and then we just pick it up from there.
No, so I really like the topic, and I think it's definitely a timely thing, this year. But I guess the one question I had, and I just start saving all this stuff till we start recording, because who knows what question or what comment can turn into scintillating conversation,
Right.
So I figured I'd ask you. So I don't agree, or I don't disagree with your premise that this is the year a lot of people are coming back. But my one question, I guess, are we keeping this strictly to like high level MMA, or are we talking combat sports in general?
I didn't look up anybody else, but I would say combat sports. Why not? I didn't look. The only people I looked up were the couple people that I shot over to you, because that's what kind of made me think about it. It was like, wow, I didn't realize this many people were coming back this year. But I'm more than welcome to open it up to combat sports in general, and even people that I didn't shoot over to you that you may have found that kind of came back this year. Um, yeah, because I'm definitely open to talking all combat sports, as you know.
Gotcha. Well, and it's still MMA fighters, so it'll still be relevant. And it's not like it's a gang of them, but just a couple names
Mhm.
that one that I know you're a big fan of. So you'll be super happy I brought it up.
Okay, so for the people that I did send over to Lot, some notable fighters that came back. Miesha Tate came back in July. She's actually slated, I think December or late November. I think she'll be fighting again, so she'll actually be getting two fights in this year. Um, Nate Murquatt came back. He got two fights in this year. Nate Diaz, who I know Locke has always been a big Nate Diaz fan, so he came back and fought one of Locke's other favorite fighters, Lawler. And then Fedor came back this year. And all, kind of late in the year, Misha was, mid year in July, but everybody else came back, August, September, October. And these were all, especially for anybody that may be a newer MMA fan, these were all big names. So Misha Tate was both a Strike Force champion. And wait, did she win the title? I don't remember. Or when her and Ronda fought the first time, I don't remember if that was for the vacant belt or if she already had it and Ronda took it.
No, that would have been her first defense. So she
Okay,
was the
that
champ.
okay. Got it. So she won that. Then she won the UFC title. Nate Murquatt was a Strike Force champion. Couldn't quite get the strap at UFC.
Competed
Nate
for the title
Diaz,
though.
yes. Nate Diaz was Strike Force champion. Did not get the strap in the UFC. And Fedor, I think, held the strap in pretty much every promotion he was in at least once, but he was never they were never able to work out a deal with him with the UFC, but initially he was a big Pride guy. And then when Pride went away, he kind of floated around M1, Strike Force, a couple different spots. But so these are not just kind of fly by night names. These are big names in the sport. And you go back a few years, we're at the top of the sport. And now after long layoffs and things of that sort, they kind of came back. So I want to throw out there for you first kind of what you thought about them coming back and performances, things of that sort. And the big question I have is why come back?
So my opinion on all those questions vary per fighter. So I think that's like a spider web question because every question, each fighter is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
Now, all of the fighters you mentioned, Nick Diaz, Miesha Tate, Fedor, Nate, Marquardt, I don't have a problem with any of them coming back. Nate would be the closest to me thinking should probably hang it up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but none of these guys are out there embarrassing themselves and I shouldn't say embarrassing themselves. They're not really getting hammered like BJ Penn is.
Right.
Like BJ Penn is one of the few fighters that I would say needs to stop fighting because I usually just feel like it's not who am I to tell this adult man what he needs to do with his life, I think BJ needs to hang it up, but all of these guys are people that I'm still comfortable with being out there fighting. My take would be I'm skeptical to some of their approaches. So the person that I think that most deserves to come back actually been out the longest, which is Misha Tate. I think she did go out on 2 losses, but one was a decision. They were high level competition. She was still competitive. She had recently won a title. She found something else to do. She had a couple kids, which is an issue males don't have to deal with as fighters.
Right.
She
Right.
wanted to start a family, that kind of thing. She was still young. I mean, today, after taking that time off, she's still only, what is she?
She's 35.
Yeah, so she's 35 today. That's after taking 5 years off. You know what I mean? So I think she deserved to come back, and I really think that it's something she wanted to pursue some other opportunities, make sure that she had potential to a life outside of fighting, and that's why she took, some executive work at. It was One, right? That's
Yep.
where
Yep.
she was like vice president at One,
Yep.
and pursue some family things. But I think when it was all said and done, after taking some of that time off, she realized, I still am competitive. I think I got a run in me. I needed some time off, but I'm ready to go.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I will say this on your BJ Penn comment. This is the difference in BJ Penn and everybody else that we named. BJ Penn was still fighting very relevant fighters, right? If
Mm-hmm.
we look at, and I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong here, it's just a difference, right? If we look at Misha Tate came back and fought Marion, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, Renew, but Marion was coming off of a 4-fight losing streak, right? So it's not like she came back to fight somebody in the top 5, top 10, or whatever. Nate Murquatt first fight back, he fought a guy that was 1-4 in his last 5. He won that fight. Second fight, he fought a guy that was 2-3 in his last fight, and this guy actually hadn't fought in almost 4 years. He lost that fight via TKO. Nate Diaz actually had the longest layoff of anybody, 6 years and 8 months, almost 7 years. That is a tremendous amount of time to come back. His last fight was Silva in 2015, and we know how that went. But of course, there was a lot of rumors and things around stuff that may have happened to him or didn't happen in camp. There was a rumor that he may have got knocked out in camp. There was a rumor that he got injured and couldn't train the way he needed to. We know we saw a very different Nick Diaz, but even then, he was fighting Lawler. Lawler's always a tough fight. So what I'm about to say now is definitely not a knock on Lawler, but it's not the Lawler of old. He was 1-4 in his last five coming into that fight, right?
Tread
And
careful.
Fedor, I don't want any problems, no problems. And then Fedor, he actually had the shortest layoff. I was surprised. It seemed like he was off longer than that, but he was only off roughly 2 years, a little under 2 years. But the guy that he fought was the only one out of those that had a winning record in their last five, and he was 3-2 in his last five, right? So BJ will fight the up and coming guy that may be undefeated, or a guy that two fights ago fought for a title, or something like that. So I think there's a very big difference in why we see the result that we see with BJPN. But I think the problem is, especially when you look at the UFC and them, getting or offering somebody like BJ a fight. I don't think BJ would take a fight with somebody that's coming off of a 4 or 5 fight losing streak, right? So he's not even going to take that fight. As far as Misha Tate, I definitely agree. The problem with a lot of these people, Nick Diaz, I think, is the only big exception on this list. Their styles haven't evolved enough, in my opinion, for today's MMA. We've talked about before the transition of where MMA has went, and my problem with Misha Tate is she definitely represents that. When she left the sport almost 5 years ago, her style was already kind of not up to par with kind of what we were seeing today in women's MMA. The skill level has jumped a lot since, the days of her and Ronda fighting and things of that sort. And I still saw the same thing in this fight to me. I didn't see her looking like she had a style that would be competitive at 135 or 125. I did see what appeared to be something that could be a little bit better, or her honing in a little bit more of the style that she already had. But I just don't. I just think women's MMA is moving faster than men's MMA because they had more ground to make up, and I think she's too far behind. And then to your point, having the kids and everything like that, I get it. I understand when something's just in you and it's been your life for so long. I understand the fighter wanting to get back, but coming back, especially to the UFC and to 135, and with the same style, just seems like I don't know if enough thought was put into it, if that makes sense.
So I disagree. Now, I don't think Misha Tate has another title run in her. I'm not gonna say she. Obviously it's the fight game. Anything can happen. You know.
Right.
Um. So I don't want to say she could never do it, but I don't see a title run in her future. But I think she's still a high enough caliber fighter that's still has enough in the tank just physically, as a physical specimen, that she could still make some interesting fights. And I don't know if, nowadays with having a card every week, basically, and then, 12, 14 fights a card, I think there's always going to be room for interesting fights that aren't necessarily playing into the rankings. Um, I'd watch, not tomorrow, because I think she probably need another fight, but I'd watch, Misha Tate versus Rocky in a rematch.
Um, I, her versus Rocky, I can't disagree with, but only because I don't think Rocky is mentally in the game at all anymore. I think she's accepted that she's never gonna beat an Amanda Nunes or something like that, and she's not going to be champion. And it's more about getting the paycheck versus being the best,
She's the
right?
breadwinner in that family.
Yeah, so it's like I don't think it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying she's not training hard or anything like that. I believe she is, but we know, especially within the arena of sports, sports is very mental. It's very different. It's like when we see a person that's just undefeated, and Ronda Rousey, who I absolutely love. So for me even to say this, it has to be true, right? But it's like watching Ronda Rousey, right? And she's undefeated and she's a world beater, and then she takes a loss, and it's almost like everything's gone. And it's because that thing that she had mentally was shaken and she couldn't get it back, right? So I don't think that you have to be a Ronda Rousey to have that. I think you can even be a B level fighter, and still have that, where at some point in time you just look at it as, I'm fighting to get a paycheck. It's not, I'm going to be the best in the world. I'm going to win a title. Everybody can't be Glover Teixeira. Glover, even at 100 years old, went out and fought every fight like he was trying to win a title. He was never coasting or anything like that. He was continuously trying to get better. Even with this, you saw, if you look at Glover when he kind of came into the UFC, it was more just kind of brawler. And then he transitioned that over to brawling, mixing it up with wrestling and things. Go
Are
ahead.
you trying to say a Hackleman fighter would be out there brawling? Get the fuck out
Every
of here.
single one of them. But yeah, so it transitioned from that to kind of brawl wrestling, and he continued to. He didn't change styles, but he really added to it. Right, at every fight you can see he still wanted. He was still hungry. I don't see that with a Rocky, right? But if Misha Tate wins a couple fights, it is still the UFC, and there's not a lot of big names in women MMA. Who do you really put her up against that she stands a chance with the same style that she has? The striking in women's MMA has gotten a lot better, and that's still her weakest point, right? Like it's in my opinion, comparatively speaking, it's very primitive. It's not like we saw her like a Nama Yunus, who really developed her striking in a way that even though, in my opinion, I don't think she's as good a striker as Wei Lee or as Joanna, but she developed her striking in a way that was perfect against those type of fighters, those aggressive type of fighters, right? I don't see those kind of changes with Misha, right? So it becomes, you know, why, right? Why? And don't get me wrong, once again, I get and I understand the love of the sport, but 135 isn't a, it's not a joke. You got some heavy hitters at 135 women's division. And then if she dropped down to 125, come on, nobody wants to see my girl. We know that. Nobody. Best number one champion.
Valentina?
Yeah, of course. The best. But listen, they're talking about trying to figure out some type of way to make another fight with her and Nunez now. People have been talking about, because it's like they're like, we don't see anybody beat either one of them anytime soon. And both of their fights were very competitive. I personally think it's 1-1. But they're like, what are we gonna do? We're running out of women. they're running the gambit. This is like old school Anderson Silva GSP. You run the gambit, and got to fight people over again and whatnot.
I think it's funny that you think Valentina is like the top champion ever. I always even forget that that's a division still. Like, oh
Haters.
yeah, we're still out there doing that. Come on, let's fold
I
that.
mean, she's on the great, the show that, and she talked about this. She was never a 135 fighter. The only reason why she fought at 135 was because that was the only place she fit in the UFC when she came. And then as soon as they made a division for her, she dropped down to her normal weight class, right? But and you remember this from the fight group, way, way, way back when she first came to the UFC. I was so excited because I said I can't wait to see a fight between her and Joanna because of the fight that they had in kickboxing or whatever. But of course, Joanna was 115, and we know that it's a very tough cut for her. She, Valentina went the other way. She's like, I don't want to have that big cut. I'm just gonna go up, and we see what she was able to do, dominate with the exception of the champ, and those fights were controversial.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, she's really a specimen. And then of course I was able to see her versus Joanna when Joanna was like, okay, I'll go to my normal weight class, and we know how that turned out. Flawless victory.
um, before she came to the UFC, Karate Hottie was a atom weight, 105,
Mm,
and they just didn't have that as a weight class.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So she had to bulk up to 115, which, I mean, big booty Waterson's my favorite Waterson
Yes.
anyways. So
Yes, I would agree.
I think it was the right call. I don't know career wise, but I dig it. I think 115 is her weight class and shit.
I would agree.
But at women's bantamweight, so you spent all this time talking about how UFC's flown past, women's MMA's flown past Miesha Tate. I mean, I'm looking at the top 5.
Style wise.
Style wise, yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay, go ahead.
Jermaine Durandamy is the number 1 contender. You don't think Miesha Tate's... she literally quit a division and folded her title to not fight Cyborg. You don't think... you don't think Tate has a shot against Durandamy?
I don't. And this is the reason why I don't. Because what Durandamy has is still Miesha Tate's kryptonite. Her stand up, I think, is just too good. And the issue is,
She's long.
yeah, very. And I think the issue is Durandamy was scared of Cyborg. There's a very big difference going back to the mental when you're scared of somebody. I don't think anybody's scared to fight Cupcake. It doesn't mean that Misha can't win. I didn't think she would beat Holly, and she pulled that out because of heart, right? It wasn't because of skill, because she was brutally getting beat in that fight. It was because of heart, and she has heart, right?
Yeah.
But nobody's scared to fight Misha Tate. Cyborg put
Right.
fear in people's heart.
I get what you're saying. And I agree. Jermaine Durandamy was afraid of Cyborg, but she wasn't afraid of Miesha Tate. But Miesha Tate's not afraid of any fighters, I don't think. So all I'm saying is Jermaine Durandamy is the number 1 contender.
Yes.
And there's some quit in that dog. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
Like if she was a pit bull, Michael Vick would drown her.
I agree, but let me tell you the difference. We know that there was a guy out there named Anthony Rumble Johnson. There was the scariest man walking at 205 pounds. If he touched
still
you,
is.
your lights go out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a little pudgy round dude named DC. And he said, listen, I know Anthony Rumble Johnson's history. And deep down inside of him, he's a quitter. The problem is most people can't take him there. I'm going to take him into deep waters, and then he's going to volunteer and give me his neck, and I'm going to make him quit. And that was exactly what he did, right? So I'm saying that to say there are certain instances where, yes, I get it. Durandamy's a quitter, but Miesha Tate isn't the person to put that fear or have that style to make a Durandamy quit. You got to go out there and beat her, right? DC was exactly what was needed and had the style to make Rumble Johnson quit, and he proved it by doing it twice.
What about Juliana Pena?
Juliana beats Juliana beats Miesha Tate. Yes, even after her layoffs and everything like that, Juliana still wins.
I think I think this is you're trying to hide it and you're doing a decent job, but this is your Rousey fandom just having a whole episode around shitting on Misha Tate just cause fucking old Rhonda Brown will be so proud of you
Ronda
shitting
Brown.
on Misha Tate for no reason. Let this lady have a second career, man.
No, no, not at all, not at all. This is I really just think the sport, and
I'm ashamed of you.
I really just think the sport, is really evolving. And yeah, I get it. There's still some older people at the forefront. The people that you're naming, I think, fits in that category. But they all have her kryptonite. Everybody you name, they're all strikers, right? It's not like we're talking about her fighting, Aspen Ladd or what's her name that just
Aspen
lost?
Ladd's top five.
I know, but I'm saying as far as she's more of a ground person, where I would
Mm-hmm.
give Misha Tate more of a chance. Everybody you name is a striker and they hit hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, or let's say if she was fighting what's her name? Megatron's daughter. What is her name? She was big jujitsu before she came to the
Irene?
UFC. What was that?
Irene Aldana?
No, what is her name? I'll think of her name in a minute. You know the one that changed her accent. She's born in America, but now she only talks with a Brazilian accent.
Mackenzie Dern?
Yeah, it's not like she's fighting a McKenzie or something like that, or some of these newer fighters that mainly are on the ground. She doesn't have to worry about their striking. I give her a better chance, but these same women that she retired from because of the striking, and these up and coming women that have striking are going to be a huge problem for her. That's my point.
So, how dare you drag Mackenzie Dern into this? There's,
First
there's
of all, I
no
love
there's no
Mackenzie
reason
Dern.
there's no reason to play dirty, okay? Leave Mackenzie Dern alone. And then um you made me forget my second fucking point. I was so fucking pissed. Oh yeah. I think out of the four fighters you named,
hmm
Misha Tate is the second most competent contender in her division out of those four.
I don't think it's about competency. I think, and I've always been this person. A lot of people don't believe this. I'm an absolutely styles make fights type of person. Absolutely. Those matchups make a difference, right? If even though Misha beat Holly Holm, if they were to fight five more times, I would put my money on Holly Holm five of those times. Because yeah, Misha Tate won and she won by stoppage. She choked her out, but she was getting absolutely destroyed because of the difference in style and Holly Holm's kickboxing. So to me, it's the styles that mean something. The same reason why nobody wants to fight Nunes. Nunes isn't the most skilled, but her style and her stand up at that weight class, nobody's been able to solve that problem yet. The closest has been Valentina, right? And it's because of her movement with her striking. But even when they asked her, they kind of asked her, like, well, if you all were to fight for a third time, would you try to, like, gain a bunch of weight and really like put on muscle and try to match her? And she was like, no. She's like, right now, nobody can match Nunes at the size. The best you can do is try to be quick and strike and everything like that. If you try to play the size game with Nunes, it's just not happening. Unless what's her name? Gabby, I forget her last name.
Gabby Sanchez,
Is that her last name?
I believe
The
so.
the
The big
BJJ.
jiu-jitsu girl.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Unless she somehow was able to drop down to 135, which I doubt because she made Cyborg look small. That's the only person that could outsize Amanda Nunes right now. And Amanda Nunes carries that weight better than anybody else. She doesn't get too bulky. It's not like she's lifting a ton of weight to be that size. She's just a big girl and she hits like a truck, right? So I really think that certain attributes in these fighters makes a difference when you're matching them up via style. and most of the women that you named are all strikers. If we look at, just even that top five, you got Nunez, you got Durandamy, you got Holly Holm, you got Irene, you got Pena, right? So, once again, and I get what your initial point, you don't think she's coming back to make a title run, but that goes back to my point. I get you love the fight, but why are you really coming back? Is it really worth it? Especially now that you have two young kids. Is it really worth it? Because I'm seeing all these strikers at the top of the division, and I don't see you beating any of them.
Yeah. Okay, I kind of get that. It wasn't Gabby Sanchez. It was Gabby Garcia.
Yeah, that's the
Is
name.
that
Yeah, I was
Gabby
like
Garcia?
Sanchez. I don't know if that sounds right. Yep, Gabby Garcia. It is.
So look, I'm you know just typical white guy in America, just racist as fuck, like Garcia, Sanchez, whatever. Um, but no, she's 6'2", 209.
Yeah, she's huge. Yeah,
So
she's
she's
huge.
gigantic.
Yeah, very
Um,
huge.
and maybe I should rephrase that because I guess I shouldn't say. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as far as people that could contend or could, in theory, ever hold a title again, I think she's the second most likely out of those four. Because I get what you're saying, and when you break down the rankings, you're right. But then look at the welterweight top five. Who's Nick Diaz beating? Is he's not beating Usman, he's not beating
Right.
Colby, he's not beating and he's getting
Yes.
beat, you know? Nate Marquardt, I mean, he's getting beat on the regional level. You know,
Yeah.
he's struggling to win fights at Titan fights, you know, so he's
Right.
not. And to him, I'm guessing it's got to be a money thing, right? I mean, he's like 30-20.
It was weird. He said he had a dream and some other stuff, and he's really religious now. He went on like a I think he's Mormon if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. But whatever it is, where you kind of go through the process almost to be like a a a, a pre or preacher, or like a where you're gonna carry the word like a
A missionary.
missionary or something like that. Yeah, there's like a schooling and everything that you have to go through. And he mentioned doing that and actually kind of going on some retreats and everything. But he said he had a dream and like a vision, and somehow that led him to coming back to fighting. So I don't know what's what of that. I don't know that it's money, and especially him. I think that he definitely could get a job somewhere easily as as a coach. He seemed to be the right temperament. He's been in, all the big leagues and everything like that. I'm pretty sure a lot of organizations would be lucky to have him. Um, so, and that's what's hard to tell. Like Misha's, I doubt it was money, right? Because like you said, she was an executive at one. I doubt hers was money. I don't think the Diaz brothers are hurting for any money, right? I think Nick probably got his own weed right now, right? So I don't think it's a money thing. And Fedor, it's hard to tell. You never know kind of on the Russian scene how things work, but it seemed like he was a guy that was taken care of, so to speak, right? So that's what's weird. I don't know that it's money for any of these people. Not saying they're super rich or couldn't use the money, but I don't know that that's the factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. Nate Marquardt was the only one that I was thinking it could be money. I didn't know he had a religious epiphany. That makes sense, and I get that. Like as a wrestler, Vision Quest is my jam movie wise, so I get that.
Hmm.
That one last run, anything can
Hmm.
happen. But yeah, that's what I was saying. Out of all of them, he seemed the least likely to, because Fedor is not in the UFC and he's not a legit title contender, but he's at heavyweight, which is a terrible division historically. Not terrible. I mean, obviously they're beasts, but I just mean where you can win a couple fights and you're right in there, and then older
Right,
guys tend to do well.
right.
Um, but out of all those guys, Fedor probably still makes the most per fight. He still probably makes $1 million per fight to fight.
Yeah. And the thing about heavyweights, and I remember back in the day George Foreman talking about this. the last thing to leave is the power, right? The same thing like with golf and everything like that. You meet older golfers, they said hitting the ball far is not the issue as you get older. You end up with more issues of precision as you get older. But a lot of those guys get in the Masters division, they can hit the ball just as far as they used to be able to. When Foreman came back, he said power wasn't something that he lost, coming back or whatever. It was more, some of the stamina things and, of course, speed, right? So with Fedor, his style hasn't changed much. He's going to throw looping punches and take some punches, and he's hoping to catch you and knock you out. And, as you know, Fedor really doesn't go to decisions. The fight's going to end somehow. If you look at his record, he's 40-6. He's been in 9 decisions in his whole career, none as a loss. So you're not going to take Fedor and beat him up and drag him to a decision. He's going to do something drastic where either he's going to knock you out or you're going to knock him out, or he's going to rock you and then submit you, right? So, you know, that would be the person I would think is more likely to make a run, especially when you talk about Bellator, because what is Bellator? We talked about this on another podcast, right? It's all old UFC guys. I haven't seen them really breed their own people yet. So yes, although we know he lost to like a Ryan Bader and a Matt Mitrione before, it's heavyweight. It's heavyweight, man. And the way these guys fight, anybody can get caught and it can be over, right? I totally agree with you said with Nick Diaz. I don't see him, especially because I think he has a problem with big wrestlers, and in that division now, that division, as we talked about, I think is scary. You got these big wrestlers that can strike with cardio for days. It's a nightmare in any division, right? So I don't see that. And as you said, Nate, he's getting KO'd by guys on the regional scene. And as I mentioned, the guy that he fought that he lost to was coming off of an almost 4-year layoff, right? 3 years and 7 months. So it's not like this guy was out there really, mixing it up. And the guy was 2-3 in his last five. So it's not like they picked a big thing for him. It was like let's bring him along slowly, and he wasn't able to make it happen. And he didn't look bad in that fight. It's just, I mean, as you mentioned before, that's the fight game. And I don't think that this guy was anywhere near the caliber of what you normally would see at any high level of 185, meaning the guy that he fought. Just what I was seeing as they were mixing it up, he didn't look like he would be a threat in any of the larger promotions.
Yeah, definitely. But also good for him. You know, if he wants to go 500 on the regional circuit, I'm with it. You know,
Right.
I mean, for real, I'm not even trying to be condescending. Like whatever it is, you got. I've seen Rocky Balboa. You know, if you got a little bit of stuff left in the cellar, you need to get out. Go do your thing, Nate. You know, like I said, you're not embarrassing himself or anything like that. So
That actually brings up a question. I'll let you finish and then I have a question for you about that.
go.
So the question is, understanding that, and I would agree with you. And I love to see one of the guys be able to still make money, but then in a lot of other forms of entertainment, especially nowadays, they're finding different ways to reinvent themselves, still be relevant, get some of the light that they're used to having, make some money, right? Like for example, music industry, especially the rap scene, almost all of those guys have podcasts now, right? Finding different avenues, different things that they can do. You got a lot of people that were actors and things of that sort kind of starting to transition over to the YouTube space. So, something where they can still be relevant, but kind of in their own self. I don't understand why more of these fighters don't go the road of a Nogi, BJJ. Chael Sonnen has his league that I think is kind of like combat jujitsu, but even like a combat jujitsu or something else, if you really have this you need to get out of your system, it's not about money or anything like that, but looking at the risk to reward ratio, why don't you do something else still competitive? And you can even pull some of your old rivals into it, right? One of the previous podcasts, we talked about, Nate Murquatt, KO, and Tyron Woodley. I would love to see that in some type of grappling match, right? So there's these other avenues, and I don't understand why they don't go into any of them.
So I don't know how these are gonna come out, like as far as release date wise, but I really hope it reflects
Nobody knows.
how much you be babbling about these fucking jujitsu grappling tournaments and shit that nobody wants or nobody watches that you just
they're
love.
all on. They're all on UFC Fight Pass.
Yeah. The ironic part is you're always pushing these jujitsu tournaments, and then the second I say, "Look, I think amateur wrestling could be a big thing to blow up," you're like, whatever. Like,
Nobody watches that.
nope,
It's
you
not on
just
Fight Pass.
um. But I do think, okay, along that vein, if that's what you're talking about, like I get that. So we do like a miracle match, not a miracle matchup, but just something I would dig to see. So along the veins is, Khabib is retired, right? Doesn't want to come back, but we're talking about comebacks and stuff. So why don't we do a Nogi Khabib versus Dylan Danis?
Or Ferg. They never got it in. Khabib Ferg. But yes, I would absolutely go
Well,
with
Ferg's
Khabib
he's still
Dennis.
under UFC contract. Well, I guess probably so is Khabib, so that'd be the one you'd have to do.
Yeah, I think because especially the UFC has so many of these under contract with Fight Pass, I think they could make it work with some of these promotions because, Fight Pass is kind of what's becoming the place to watch these. So I think they can make it happen.
Or like an old school UFC, but of grappling. So I'd really like to see like some kind of like a mixed rules grappling match between like a Jordan Burroughs and then like I don't know, like a Damian Maya or
Yes.
a Damian Maya level guy. Like let's see the highest level of each. How does it play out? Like and honestly, I don't even really have a prediction. I legitimately want to know like how does that play out?
Yeah, I think most of these I wouldn't have a prediction because I really think the game changes a lot when you have strikes. We don't know what it would be. And then, like I said, if you don't want to do straight grappling, you have combat jiu-jitsu out there. They allow strikes as just open hands, so it's more like old school. Um,
Pancrase or whatever.
yeah, pancrase. Yeah, I was trying to think of the name. Yeah, where it's like you could do palm strikes and stuff like that. They have a interesting rule set, but that's something where you still can get in there and mix it up some, right? But it's not the type of punishment that you know you can't endure as you get older. And none of these nobody we're talking about is a spring chicken. I mean, you mentioned Misha 35, right? Murquatt is 42, Diaz is 38, and Fedor is 45. So it's not like any of them are spring chickens, and all of them have been fighting for a nice amount of time, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's Yeah, because the extra guy I had I thought was a younger guy, and I look at his age, he's 36 too. So even
Who is
guys I
that?
think are young ain't even young nowadays.
Who was that?
Chad Mendez.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. You
Chad,
do think of Chad as a kind of a younger guy, but yeah, you're right.
no, he's 36.
Yep, yeah.
But so he's making his comeback, and that's why I was asking earlier if we are talking about just strictly like MMA or whatever,
Hmm.
because Chad Mendez is coming back to do. He just
Bare
signed with
knuckle.
Bare Knuckle.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And you've made this point quite a few times. I like bare knuckle. I think it could rival MMA. I don't necessarily think it's the right thing for what we're talking about in particular, especially as you get older. And I'm thinking about you not taking as much damage. I don't think that fits. Not if you're comparing. Now, if you're saying go to boxing versus bare knuckle, yes, I still believe that bare knuckle, although it's bloody and it looks brutal, is better than you getting hit over and over in the head with these, massive
Big
amounts of
ass
hand
gloves.
wraps and gloves, right? So I think it's better than that, but not comparatively speaking to a combat jujitsu or some of these other things. But
Especially to a
um,
5'5" wrestler.
exactly. So, I think that you know, it would be interesting to see what happens with Chad Mendez. Also with bare knuckle because of it being bare knuckle, I think you're very limited on how many times you can compete in a year because you're more likely to have cuts and everything like that. Those have to heal. Versus once again, if you get big names into some of these things like combat jujitsu, it can grow and you're not taking the damage that doesn't allow you to, let's say you're not making a lot of money, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure you're making more money than where did Nate fight? Nate fought first at Titan and his loss was at XMMA. I'm pretty sure enough names go over to a combat jiu-jitsu or something, you can make more money than an XMMA, especially if now it allows your body to compete more often. Let's say you can compete 3 times a year, something like that, like you could in your prime, 3, 4 times a year. Now you have something there. With bare knuckle, I definitely don't think that unless you literally aren't getting touched, um, I don't think that you would be able to compete more than twice a year just based on what's likely to happen from the strikes of the knuckles. You know what I mean?
Definitely. I get that. It makes sense. But aesthetically, we seem to prefer. And I am a grappler by trade. I love wrestling and stuff. But unfortunately, as a society, we prefer fisticuffs to the grappling arts.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think people like us can see the art in all of them, but most people it's mainly what they know or what they grew up on, and you'd be surprised how many people I talk to that still don't think that BJJ works. Oh man, if they try to grab me, then I'm a kneel and then
Yeah, in 2021, people are still saying, "Why doesn't he just get up and punch him?" Yeah, it's a good call. I didn't think of that.
I don't think he thought of that. You probably could make a lot of money as a manager if you go ahead and just find a couple fighters and tell them that. I'm pretty sure it'll work. No, yeah, but I figured this would be a good topic, just because of kind of the questions and digging into not just some of the fighters, but as we talked about, why certain people would come back, um, people that you think has a chance to at least make some kind of a run, and everything like that. And I think the only thing, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that you really can come up with is somehow it's really just the love of the sport. And I know for some instances that sounds cliche or people don't get it, but if you're not a fighter, it might just not be for you to get. Some things you have to be a part of to understand the drive, the love, everything like that of it. And when you're not of that, you just can't get it. And even the fighters themselves, everybody say they're not going to fight past a certain point or something like that, and almost all of them end up doing it, right? I'll never fight past 40, and then they retire at 39 and come back at 42, right? So that's the best that I can see. I really just think it's the love of the sport, and I love watching people compete. I just want that safety factor to be there. As I always say, I want people to be able to talk to their kids and grandkids. If you can compete and still do that, I'm all for it. All thumbs up. What about you, Locke?
Yeah, I agree. Make your money. Like I said, if you got something going on that makes you have to still feel like you have to get out there and scrap, then by all means, do your thing.
Man.
I had one more guy though.
Yep, go ahead,
That
shoot.
uh, Rashad Evans, your boy.
Yeah, yeah, he's a heartbreaker. But he came back, or he's
He was
coming
gonna
back.
box.
Oh, who's he gonna box? I didn't hear about it.
He doesn't have a fight yet, but he's like he's back in the game. He's pursuing a boxing career.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Striking wasn't his strong point. He was. Let me take that back because I said it wrong. Getting hit wasn't his strong point, right?
Very good striker.
Yeah, he was a good
Very
striker.
good
But when it
striker.
comes to taking strikes, even in some of his wins, it just wasn't. Especially once he got knocked out by Machida, he was a different fighter. It was like he was shell shocked. He was a very different fighter after that. So him having the Michigan State, background of wrestling. I definitely would rather see him in some type of and I believe
Nogi
he's coaching.
grappling.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
once again, combat
Shocker.
jiu-jitsu. Yeah. But I
So
think he's
so let's call this segment
coaching over at
"Me Name
Sanford.
Fighters That You Think Should Grapple."
Listen, most of them have a grappling background though, right? Let's name them. Misha Tate. Where was she first?
She's a wrestler.
Okay. Nate Murquatt.
I don't know. Is he a wrestler?
Wrestler. Yes,
Oh, okay.
wrestler. Yeah. Remember he was an old Team Quest guy or whatever,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
Nick Diaz, what is he?
BJJ guy,
Okay,
grappler.
grappler, right? Fedor, what is he?
Sambo,
Sambo, grappler,
grappler.
right? So, and
Yeah.
Rashad Evans, Michigan State
Yeah,
wrestler.
D1
So
wrestler, Big Ten.
that's right. It's not like what I'm saying is like far out of the question, right? It's like I'm just trying to get them to come back home to their roots,
Yeah.
Come back home, be
Hey,
embraced.
everybody you gotta come back home.
But that's all I got. You got anything else, Lock?
I can't say anything better than come back home, man.
Well, thank you everybody for listening. It's been another Fat Boy MMA podcast. That wraps up another Fat Boy MMA podcast. If you have a topic for us, please email us at fatboymma55@gmail.com or reach out to us on social media by going to links.fatboymma.com. That's links.fatboymma.com. Thank you for listening.